John Harbaugh to the Giants, and he's taking some familiar Ravens faces with him. We'll also go over who the Ravens have interviewed so far for their head coach opening, including two intriguing names today. Nate Wiggins gets surgery. We'll talk about Lamar Jackson's extension, his involvement in the head coach process, and also an offseason to-do list. And I'll rank my top 5 head coaching candidates for the Ravens. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Sorry I didn't post videos the last 2 days. I was not feeling well at all, but we are back. We're going to get caught up on everything. Also pushing the first members-only live to next Thursday, January 22nd at 7 p.m. We're going to do a live mock draft, go over some off-season strategies, and then the second half of the live, I'll just open up the guest lines to members, and we can just talk, ask questions, whatever, and just hang out for a little bit. So we're going to be doing those members-only lives at least once a month, hopefully more than that. You still get all the other perks of being a member, player icon next to your name when you comment, priority reply to comments, highlighted comments in the live, random giveaways, and an extra members-only live stream. So just trying to provide as much value as possible. If you're interested in being a member, just hit that join button below. If not, just keep rocking with the videos, hit the subscribe button, keep liking the videos, showing love. Appreciate all of you guys more than you know. And with all that out the way, let's dive into today's topic. So John Harbaugh is a Giant. Well, not technically officially, they are still working out the contract details, but he is about to be a New York Giant, the head coach of the New York Giants, and he's bringing Todd Monken with him as the offensive coordinator. And then there's reports out there right now that he's leaning towards bringing Anthony Weaver in as D coordinator, which is a little weird because he did choose Zach Orr in Baltimore over Anthony Weaver, and then Anthony Weaver ended up going to Miami, but they interviewed him for the defensive coordinator position. John Harbaugh chose Zach Orr. Love Zach Orr as a person, but obviously that has not really worked out over the last 2 seasons. The defense definitely regressed in a major way from the Mike Macdonald defense. And I know we lost Matabike, but it was just more than that, man. It's not just losing Matabike. You don't become the 24th ranked defense in the NFL when you were the first ranked defense in the NFL with Mike Macdonald. But those days are over. We're on to brighter days here. But it is interesting that John Harbaugh is potentially bringing in Anthony Weaver as defensive coordinator. The Ravens also interviewed Weaver as a head coach candidate, but obviously if John Harbaugh brings him as DC to New York, then he wasn't really a prime option for head coach, because I'm sure he would take a head coach position over a DC position. So we'll see how that shakes out. Not sure if he's definitely going there or not, but that's what the early reports are saying. Todd Monken is reported and expected to be the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. So Harbaugh keeps Monken with him, and that's such an interesting, fun combo, honestly. I think the Giants have a fun squad that Monken's going to have a good time with, man, with Dart and Scatabo and Neighbors and whoever else they draft. The defense is already good. They got a great D-line, a great pass rush, so it'll be a fun little team. I think that the New York Giants definitely got elevated. You know, they definitely could be like a fringe playoff team now, and they got a young core that they can continue to build around. So congrats to John Harbaugh, wishing him nothing but the best. We don't really play the Giants ever. The next time we play the Giants is in 2028. So the Ravens are not going to have many games against John Harbaugh unless we happen to play the Giants in the Super Bowl, but I think that's pretty unlikely at this point. So, 2028 is the next time that we even play the Giants. So this is going to be from a distance, kind of. We're not going to really be playing Harbaugh too much. It's not like if he went to Cleveland or something and we'd be playing him all the time. And speaking of the AFC North, Mike Tomlin also stepped down. So there are 3 teams in the AFC North that do not have head coaches. The only head coach that remained is Zach Taylor on the Bengals, which is also kind of surprising just because of the season that they just had. I know Burrow got hurt and whatnot, but you would think there could be some coaching changes there as well. But Cleveland doesn't have a head coach, and now Pittsburgh and Baltimore do not have head coaches either. So massive shakeup coming in the AFC North. Mike Tomlin, I think, is headed straight towards TV and just hanging out with his family, at least for a year. So not expected to see him coaching anywhere else, but John Harbaugh quickly landed a job in New York. So congrats to Harbaugh, man. Wishing you the best. And especially since we don't really have much of a connection to the New York Giants. We rarely ever play them. We're not really the Ravens and John Harbaugh are not going to see each other or have a lot of battles. So we'll just be kind of watching from afar. Moving on to the Ravens head coach search. They are almost done with the first round initial wave of Zoom interviews. It'll be really interesting to see who they narrow this list down to. Let's get caught up on who the Ravens have officially interviewed and who they are still yet to interview this weekend. So the Ravens have officially interviewed Brian Flores, Vance Joseph, Cliff Kingsbury, Clint Kubiak, Mike McDaniel, Jesse Minter, Matt Nagy, Jim Schwartz, Kevin Stefanski, Anthony Weaver, and Davis Webb. And today the Ravens are going to be interviewing Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula and Rams pass game coordinator Nate Scheelhaase. The Ravens are scheduled to interview 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, and then the only other name that I don't know when they have a scheduled interview for, they haven't announced it, is Joe Brady, Bills offensive coordinator. I would imagine that's done at some point this weekend or after the game, but that is the only remaining name that has yet to be interviewed or scheduled. I think the two interviews today for the Ravens are pretty interesting as well. Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhaase, both from the McVay tree, and I think that they also have a nice balance of each other. I would imagine Chris Shula is the main candidate for head coach potentially, and then Nate Scheelhaase would be the offensive coordinator if Shula were to be hired. That's kind of how I see it at this point. Maybe they're interviewing Nate for the head coaching opportunity as well, but I think the Ravens are double dipping with strategy a lot here and interviewing guys like Cliff Kingsbury, maybe even a Mike McDaniel, and they are technically interviewing them for the head coaching position, but they're going to be really asking a lot of questions and kind of, asking other people who would be on your staff. And I think they're getting all of the coordinator interviews kind of mixed in there as well to see what direction they may want to go in, which coach has a connection with which coach. And I would just imagine, and I could be totally wrong, that Shula and Scheelhaase could come together depending on where they go if Shula becomes a head coach. But it's definitely an interesting duo. They come from the McVay tree. There's a balance of defense and offense. If they come as a duo, maybe they're interviewing completely separately, but I think that they're probably a duo. And, you could have a head coach and offensive coordinator and basically the defensive coordinator if Chris Shula is the head coach because he's the defensive mind. So that's kind of your staff, and it's coming straight from the McVay tree. Especially Scheelhaase is a very young mind that people are excited about. He's getting a ton of interviews, a ton of interest. So we'll just see how it pans out. I don't know who the Ravens' final 4 or 5 guys are going to be, but I do know that they're interviewing both of them today. And this is Eric DeCosta's first head coach search. He's kind of leading the charge here with Ozzie and Sashi Brown, at least from the Zoom interview perspective. I know Steve Bisciotti gets the final say, but right now they are going to narrow this list down to 4 or 5 guys, and that's not Steve Bisciotti's say. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of control in the hands of Eric DeCosta, Ozzie Newsome, Sashi Brown, and it's really interesting to see what direction they're going to go. When you listen to Eric DeCosta in the press conference, he talked about how he wants a coach in here that knows X's and O's at a high level. I think that is a big difference from John Harbaugh. Not that Harbaugh doesn't know any X's and O's, but we all know that he doesn't know modern football at the same type of level that, a guy like Scheelhaase might know, or Kubiak, or these young offensive minds, or even defensive minds that come in. John Harbaugh was a special teams coordinator. He's a leader of men. He's a CEO. And we've always said that, but it will be special and a big healthy change, I think, for this organization to get a coach in here that does know a lot about football, and especially modern day football, and can lead and have that combination. So I'm excited to see who this list gets narrowed down to. I'm excited to see what direction Eric DeCosta goes in. They've casted such a wide net, a nice balance of offense and defense, of young and old, inexperienced, experienced. So you really have no idea what this final list is going to look like. Maybe that is some of a mixture as well. But just off the interviews, the initial interviews, it sounds like they're pretty much interviewing everybody. So you don't really know what direction they are going to go in. And I thought it'd be fun to narrow this list down to 5 candidates that make sense in my mind for the Ravens to take to this next step, and kind of my favorites out of this group. We have no inside information of who it's going to be. There's no favorites. There's no sources coming out about anything. I'm sure everything's going to be very private, and next week we're just going to start seeing guys come in for interviews. So we don't know. This is pure just guessing and opinion and kind of just who I would pick. I'm sure you guys have your opinions as well. But at the top of my list, I'm still going with the offensive mind, Klint Kubiak. I know his leadership style is a little bit more reserved, but I really think that he will lift this offense and grow with Lamar in a special way for a long time, and then we would just have to figure out who was going to be his defensive coordinator. But that is the top of my list. They definitely should bring Klint Kubiak in for a in-person interview. And then second on my list is Robert Saleh. I think he's that defensive mind and leader combo. And then the dream scenario, I've been saying this all week, but the dream scenario is that Mike McDaniel, who he is close with and has coaching experience with on the Niners. And I think it would be so fun to have Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator with Lamar Jackson. I don't know how long it would last. He'd probably get an opportunity elsewhere in a few years, but it'd be a fun few years. And I do think Robert Saleh is a nice balance of bringing a strong defensive mind. I mean, look what he's doing with the 49ers right now, and they're super banged up. We have a way more talented roster, at least right now, than the Niners do on defense, and he's got them guys playing out of their mind and does so every year too. You know, this isn't a fluke year. So I think he brings leadership. You know, when he was the head coach of the Jets, he also had them playing hard, and he handled that New York media well. And I just think that he'd be a great fit and leader in Baltimore, as well as a defensive mind. Just bring in an OC like Mike McDaniel. That'd be fun, man. So Robert Saleh is number 2. Number 3 is Jesse Minter. He's got some connections to the Ravens, has been a part of this organization in the Harbaugh tree before, so I don't know if that is a deterrence, but I do like his defensive style, and I think he's a young defensive mind, kind of like a Mike McDonald, that is going to get an opportunity and thrive, man. Number 4 is who we're interviewing today, Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhaase. I think that this combo is right under the McVay tree and is exciting because it's a perfect balance. You get the OC, you get the defensive mind, you get the leader. I think that this is a nice, interesting combo, man. I don't know a ton about their leadership styles either. Haven't seen them, you know, be a head coach and have a lot of experience in that regard, but I like that they're getting a ton of interest across the league. That shows that a lot of teams want them, and I like the balance that they're from the same place, all under McVay, so I know it's gonna, you know, they're gonna have a clean, process-oriented operation, and I also know that they know ball. So I think that that is a very fun combo. And then the 5th guy on my list is Brian Flores. I think that similar to Robert Saleh, he can bring that strong defensive mind, get the Ravens playing back on track on defense. Also leader. Not sure who the offensive coordinator would be. He has connections across the league, though. He's been a head coach before. He's been moving around as D coordinator. So I know there's some reports that he kind of rubs players the wrong way, but I also think he probably could have learned from that, mold his style a certain way. I just think it's an interesting matchup. I also could see him ending up in Pittsburgh too, but Brian Flores is on my list. And then the honorable mention that is not the top 5, but I would not be shocked at all if he gets brought back for an in-person interview, is Kevin Stefanski. I know some fans are completely against that because of Cleveland, and I don't have him at the top of my list by any means, but I just would not be shocked. I actually saw a report this morning when I was watching NFL Network saying that, you know, Kevin Stefanski is going to be brought back to most of his second interviews, and that includes the Ravens. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if they bring him back. 2-time coach of the year, has had some success with a lesser talented roster, has also made some questionable moves. I didn't like how he handled the quarterback situation this year in Cleveland, and, you know, to me, could potentially have some tendencies like Harbaugh does, just watching from a distance, you know, when we play Cleveland and stuff. But I don't know. So he's further down on my list, but I'll put him as an honorable mention. But that's my top 5. Klint Kubiak, Robert Saleh are at the top of my list. A Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel combination is at the top of my list as well. So let me know what you guys are thinking about head coach. What's your top 5 list? What staff would you bring in? And, you know, who would be the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators, and why? In some other news, Nate Wiggins announced that he had successful surgery, and I'm not even sure what surgery he got. You know, he had foot, shoulder, elbow injuries, so I would imagine it's one of those, but I looked around online today today. I could not find any credible sources in saying that he got surgery, but he posted that he got surgery, so I know he got surgery. Just not sure on exactly what, but he said it went well, and obviously getting surgery this early in the offseason, I'm sure he'll be completely fine for next year. A lot of guys get small, minor surgeries to fix little nagging things that they had throughout the season, so I'm sure Nate Wiggins will be back better than ever next year, but just wanted to kind of cover that he did have successful surgery. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the offseason to-do list and kind of how I would prioritize that and things that really need to get done soon. So obviously, getting a head coach is priority number one. Building out the coaching staff, that's going to most likely happen in the next few weeks. That's priority number one. You can't make a lot of roster moves and stuff until you kind of know which direction you're headed in with what head coach, right? And get their ideas too. So getting a head coach, building a staff is first, and then it's got to be the Lamar Jackson extension. I know that this could linger, especially the way Steve Bisciotti kind of talked about it. He's like, I told Lamar how important it is. Like, we all know it needs to get done, but we also have been down the contract dance before, and it could stretch out a little bit. This might not be a very quick moving thing. I hope it is, but I do think the Lamar Jackson extension is a massive priority because it will unlock all of the freedom in free agency. I mean, right now we're sitting around $33 million in cap. That is enough to technically pay a Tyler Linderbaum and maybe even, another guy or two, but it's not going to be enough to go big fish hunting in free agency like Eric DeCosta kind of said he wanted to do in the presser. He said, hey, we want to be aggressive too. We know we need a pass rusher. So you can't go get a Hendrickson. You can't go trade for a Max Crosby. You can't make a big move like that if you don't unlock some more money. So I do think the Lamar Jackson extension is the next priority because that will unlock freedom. We could have 60 plus million of cap space moving into this offseason if we can get that Lamar Jackson extension done, and it locks him up in Baltimore for the next few years, which he gets security, and the Ravens obviously get to keep Lamar. We all want Lamar here, so let's just get the extension done and unlock a ton of money, and let's go have a frenzy and build this roster out this free agency, and that includes bringing back your own guys. I think the next priority is getting Tyler Linderbaum locked up before free agency hits. That's not a guy you want hitting the open market. He's going to get paid. I've seen some fans say that, he's going to get overpaid. Well, it is what it is, man. I don't think we can afford to open up another hole on our offensive line. So I would definitely extend Linderbaum, especially with this extra money we're going to get if the Lamar Jackson extension gets done. Steve Bisciotti said they would just add void years to Lamar's deal and do it anyway if he didn't want to agree to it. So it sounds like the Ravens are going to free some money up regardless. And I do think that will be for Tyler Linderbaum, potentially even Isaiah Likely. I don't know if they're going to bring back a Draymond Jones. I mean, there's a lot of free agents, some smaller free agent deals that they could put together. We got to make a decision on our Darius Washington or Gilman. Are we bringing one of those guys back? And there's some smaller deals that need to get done still as well, including Jordan Stout, Tyler Huntley. If we bring back Pat Ricard or not sure how this new coaching staff is going to want to handle a fullback, but I mean, Pat Ricard's been a huge piece to this run game. There's a lot of decisions to be made before free agency even starts because you kind of want to know where your money is allocated, and you don't want your own guys hitting the open market. It almost always leads to them making more money unless they just sit there for a long time, but you don't do that with your top guys. You're not going to do that with Tyler Linderbaum. I don't even know if you could do that with Isaiah Likely. You let Isaiah Likely hit the open market, I'm sure some team is going to pay him a bit more and give him more volume than he would get in Baltimore, and he's probably going to go. So hopefully we can keep a lot of these guys. I think Isaiah Likely would be a key piece to bring back, as well as Tyler Linderbaum, and then obviously Jordan Stout, Tyler Huntley, Pat Ricard. Those guys are smaller deals that also would help fill this roster out too. So handle our own guys and then go hunting in free agency. I think we should sign a veteran guard, also draft a guard as well. But I think having a veteran presence in there, even if it ends up being depth or just competition, that's good. We need a veteran on the offensive line. So I would get a veteran guard. I don't think that's going to cost a ton. And then I'm getting aggressive for a pass rusher. If that's Trey Hendrickson on the open market, we don't even have to trade. We got the money. We got the money if we can get the Lamar Jackson extension done. We can go get a pass rusher like that, or we could pony up and make a massive trade. Eric DeCosta said we were close to trading for an elite player at the deadline last year, so he's thinking about it. He's interested. Max Crosby is allegedly available. I think that would be the number one move you could possibly make. That would change everything if we're getting to the quarterback like that. And you'd probably have to give up your first round pick, so the draft would change quite a bit. But my point is, get aggressive in free agency after you've signed your own guys, after you've done the Lamar Jackson extension, after you've done the coaching staff. I think that is a nice way to build out this team heading into the draft, and then we'll still see what the holes are at that point. But let me know what you guys are thinking about everything from building out the coaching staff, who would you pick, to attacking this offseason. This is going to be a very interesting offseason. There's a lot of decisions to make, a lot of things to unfold here. Let me know how you guys see it playing out, or how you would handle it yourself if you were Eric DeCosta, and just let me know whatever else is on your mind. But appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens flock. The flock rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. So I'm telling you now, it's about to go down. The podcast, the Flock Rundown. Ravens, baby. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly.